So with regard to point number 16, then the author at Tahawiyyah rahimahullah says, ما زال بصفاته قديما قبل خلقه. He has always had his attributes before his act of creation. The saying about Allah, the Perfect and Most High, that He has always had His attributes before His act of creation. Shaykh al-Fawzan, hafidhahullah, said in his explanation, the saying of the author, قَدِيمٌ بِلَا ابْتِدَاءٍ, he's saying about Allah, the Ancient One, without any beginning, has already preceded. We had that as point number 6. The author, Tahawiyyah, already brought here in the book that we have as point number 6, about Allah, قَدِيمٌ بِلَا ابْتِدَاءٍ, that Allah is the Ancient One, without any beginning. And if we remember, it's more correct, as the explainer pointed out, it's more correct to say about Allah what occurs in the text, that He is Al-Awwal, which means the same thing, that Allah is the first, with no beginning. So the Shaykh said here, so the author has already said in this book that Allah is the Ancient One without any beginning. So there was nothing before Him. He, the Perfect and Most High. And the meaning of that is that He has the attributes of perfection. And His attributes of perfection are eternal. They have always existed and they always will. So just as He is the first, without any beginning, then likewise His attributes. The attributes are the same. Just as Allah is the first, with no beginning, likewise His attributes. Since they are along with Him, He, the one free of all imperfections. So they were always existing. Just as Allah, the Perfect and Most High, has always existed. Just as He has existed, His attributes have existed along with Him. Always. So it is not the case that He existed to begin without any attributes, and that then attributes came about for Him afterwards, as the people of misguidance say. So the Shaykh here, he refutes, as the author is refuting here, the saying of some people of misguidance. Those who say Allah existed with no attributes, and later on He came to have attributes. That when He created the creation, He became the creator, and so on. The Shaykh is saying, this saying is wrong. This is not the case. So he said, to repeat it, so it is not the case that He existed before without any attributes, and that then attributes came about for Him afterwards, as the people of misguidance say. Those who say, and then he quotes what they say, that He did not always have attributes, and then afterwards He came to have them. And the Shaykh explains why these people are misguidance, what leads them to say this. He said, they say so in order not to necessitate there being multiple lords deserving worship, as they claim. This is their false claim. Or multiple divinities in existence, Salam. Who are eternal. Such that the names and attributes would be partners with Allah in His eternity. I mean, this is what they're saying of misguidance. The people of misguidance, this is what they say. They say we can't affirm that Allah has always had these attributes. And if we said that Allah has always had attributes along with Him, that means we are affirming that these attributes are eternal, that Allah is eternal, and there are attributes which are eternal as well. So in other words, there are lords which are eternal besides Allah, and there are divinities which are eternal besides Allah, I mean His attributes. This is their false saying. The Shaykh said, so we say, how free is Allah? How free is Allah of all deficiencies? Subhanallah. This would necessitate that Allah, I mean they're saying that Allah didn't have attributes to start with. This saying would necessitate that Allah was deficient. High and exalted is Allah. That He was deficient for a period, and then He came to have attributes, and so became perfect through those attributes. High and exalted is Allah above what they say. I mean, they're saying, their false saying, that Allah initially didn't have attributes, and then He acquired attributes of perfection afterwards. So the Shaykh is saying that means then, initially Allah did not have those attributes of perfection, so Allah was not perfect. This is what they're saying amounts to. Then the Shaykh said, and the fact that His attributes are eternal does not necessitate that there are other eternal lords. I mean, the fact that we affirm that Allah is the all-hearing and has always been the all-hearing, the fact that we affirm that Allah is the all-seeing and has always been all-seeing, the fact that we affirm that Allah is the all-knowing and has always been the all-knowing, doesn't mean that we're affirming many, many lords. These are attributes of Allah, the one Lord. Shaykh Fawzan said, because the attributes are not something other than and outside the one who has those attributes. Rather, they are meanings found in the one who has the attributes. I mean, these are attributes of Allah, the one who possesses those attributes. It's not other lords besides Him. And an attribute is not something independent of the one who has the attribute. So if you say, for example, and he gives an example to make it clear to us this point. He says, if you say about a person, for example, just to get this point, that when we affirm many attributes for Allah and that these attributes are eternal, it doesn't mean that we're saying that Allah is eternal and something else is eternal and something else is eternal, and therefore there are many lords which are eternal. We don't say that. It doesn't. Our correct saying doesn't necessitate that. He gives an example to make that clear. He said, because if you say, for example, such and such person hears, he has hearing, and he sees, and he has knowledge, and he has knowledge of fiqh, he's a jurist, and he is a scholar of the language, and he is a scholar of grammar. Does that mean that this person has become many people? Of course not. It's still only the one person who is seeing, hearing, has knowledge of fiqh, knowledge of the language, knowledge of grammar, but he's one person. So the fact that we affirm all of these attributes for a person doesn't make it more than one person. So the Shaykh said, so having multiple attributes does not necessitate that the ones having the attributes are multiple, as the people of misguidance have said. I mean, that's what they say. So if that point's clear, that basically, just to again stress what these people of misguidance say, they say that initially Allah did not have attributes, because that would mean, if we say that Allah's attributes are eternal, that Allah's hearing is eternal, Allah's seeing is eternal, His knowledge is eternal, etc., that means we're saying Allah is eternal, and seeing is eternal, and hearing is eternal, and so on. So they're saying that means there's many lords which are eternal. And that is, we can't say that. So the Shaykh has refuted that. He said, no, Allah's attributes are eternal, but that doesn't mean there's more than one Lord besides Allah. The fact that Allah is the seeing one, the hearing one, the knowing one, that doesn't affirm more than one Lord besides Allah. These are attributes of Allah. Then he said, so Allah, the one free of all imperfections and the Most High, His attributes had no beginning, just as His self, His that, had no beginning. So Allah has the attribute of being the Creator, Al-Khaliq, always and forever. This is what the Tahawiyyah brought as his text here, that Allah has always had His attributes even before His act of creation. So Shaykh Fawzan makes the point here that Allah has always been, that one of Allah's attributes is that He is the Khaliq, He is the Creator. And Allah has always had that attribute of being Al-Khaliq, even before there was any creation. Even before Allah actually created the creation, He was always the Creator, Al-Khaliq. And He always will be. He said, Da'iman and Abadan. Well, Allah always has been the Creator, and He always will be. Then he moves on to another point connected to this. He said, and as for the actions of Allah the Perfect, as for His actions, then they are eternal with regard to their type, newly occurring with regard to individual actions. So this is an important point here that we've had very briefly before. So having just made the point, to reiterate the point that's just been made, as for His sifat, as for Allah's attributes, His sifat, then He has always had them. Allah has always had them. And He always will have them. And as for Allah's actions, those things which Allah does, for example speaking, then we say, with regard to speaking, Allah's action of speaking, we say that with regard to the type, Allah has always had the attribute of speech, always had that attribute. But with regard to individual cases of Allah's speech, for example, Allah's speech with the Qur'an, Allah's speaking with the Tawrat, then these are newly occurring events. Allah spoke with the Tawrat at one time, and at another time He spoke with the Qur'an, and so on. But as for His attribute of speech, then Allah has always had that eternally. And as for individual examples of His speech, then He speaks as and when He wishes. The Shaykh said, so Allah the Perfect and Most High, He is the one who speaks. And He was the one who speaks before He actually spoke. And He was the Khaliq, He was the Creator. Before He actually created anything, He was still the Creator. And as for His speaking and His creating, I mean His actions of creating and His action of speaking, then these are actions which newly occur. And so on to the rest. So on to the rest of the actions. Those actions which Allah does when He wishes. So as for the attribute, Allah has always had the attribute. And as for the action, then Allah does it when He wishes, as He wishes. And all these points here, number 16, 17, 18, and so on, all the way through, all the points that we have today, they're all connected and they're all a continuation of each other. So the next point, point number 17, لم يزدد بكونهم شيئا لم يكن قبلهم من صفته. The saying of Tahawiyyah, rahimahullah, he was not increased in anything by the creation of the creation. That was not already his attribute. Or to put it another way, it might make the meaning slightly clearer, that Allah was not increased in any attribute which He didn't have before by the creation of the creation. Shaykh Fawzan explains this point. As we said, this is a continuation of the point number 16. Shaykh Fawzan said, the saying, he was not increased in anything by the creation of the creation, that was not already his attribute. Shaykh Fawzan said, meaning his creating the creation. We do not say that he did not become a creator except after he created the people. Rather, Allah has been the creator, the Khaliq, always, forever, without any beginning to that. And as for his act of creating, then that is an action which occurs newly again and again. So again, the point there is that Allah has always been Al-Khaliq, the creator. He has always had this attribute of being the creator, even before there was any creation. Allah has been the creator without any beginning to that. And then as for Allah's action of creating, then He creates whenever He wishes, whatever He wishes, as He wishes. So the point that Tahawiyyah made there is that when Allah's creating the creation didn't make Him suddenly become the creator. He was the creator before that. Then the 18th point, وَكَمَا كَانَ بِصِفَاتِهِ أَزَلِيًّا كَذَلِكَ لَا يَزَالُ عَلَيْهَا أَبَدِيًّا. He's saying, and just as He has always possessed His attributes, then likewise He will always possess them forever. Shaykh al-Fawzan said in explanation, just as He has always had His attributes forever, meaning there was no beginning to that, then likewise His attributes will remain with Him, He the Perfect, in the future. So He is eternal along with His attributes. He has no end. Then he quotes the part of the hadith, أَنْتَ الْآخِرُ فَلَيْسَ بَعْدَكَ شَيْءٍ. The saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith in Sahih Muslim, addressing Allah in the dua, you are the last one, so there is nothing after you. Shaykh al-Fawzan said, meaning there is no end. He has no end. The last one with your names and your attributes. And Allah has no end, there's no end to Him, along with His names and His attributes. So it is not to be said that these attributes will cease to be with Him in the future. Rather, they will always be with Him, He the Perfect and Most High. Then he brings the 19th point, لَيْسَ بَعْدَ خَلْقِ الْخَلْقِ اسْتَفَادَ اسْمَ الْخَالِقِ. The saying of Tahawiyyah, he did not acquire the name the Creator after the creation of the creation. Shaykh al-Fawzan said, this is a clarification and a repetition of what has preceded. I mean, what he's just been saying before. That Allah has always been the creator. Just all of his attributes, amongst them is that he is the creator. He didn't suddenly become the creator when he created the creation. As the people of misguidance say, that initially it was just Allah with no attributes. Then when he created the creation, he became the creator and so on. No, that is false. So Tahawiyyah said, he did not acquire the name the creator, al-Khaliq, after the creation of the creation. And he brings point number 20. وَلَا بِإِحْدَاثِ الْبَرِيَّةِ اسْتَفَادِ اسْمَ الْبَارِي. Nor did he acquire the name Al-Bari, the originator or the maker. Nor did he acquire the name Al-Bari, the maker, after giving existence to the beings. Shaykh al-Fawzan said, so from the names of Allah the Mighty and Majestic is Al-Bari, which means Al-Khaliq, which means the creator. So Al-Bari, either the originator or the maker or so on. So Bara al-Khalq means he made them. So Allah is Al-Bari, meaning the maker of the creation. And this name goes along with Allah's self. It has no beginning. So just as we said about the creator, Al-Khaliq, Allah has always been the Khaliq, without any beginning to that. And likewise, Al-Bari, the one who made or originated the creation, that didn't just occur. Allah did not gain that name when He made the creation. Allah has always had that name without any beginning. Allah has always had that attribute. Then point number 21, له معنى الربوبية ولا مربوب ومعنى الخالق ولا مخلوق. He possessed the meaning of lordship and nurturing when there were no slaves, when there were no one who were creatures who were slaves under him. And he had the meaning of being the creator without there being any creation. Shaykh al-Fawzan said, so likewise he was the Rabb, he was the Lord and nurturer before anything existed for him to be the owner and the master of. And the meaning of Ar-Rabb, the Lord and nurturer, is, and Shaykh al-Fawzan gives a definition of the term Ar-Rabb, as occurs at the start of Surah Al-Fatiha, that Allah is Rabbul Alameen, the Lord and nurturer of the creation. Shaykh al-Fawzan here, he gives a definition of the meaning of the term Ar-Rabb. He said, Ar-Rabb, the Lord. So just as He, the Perfect, has always possessed the attribute of being the one who gives life to the dead, just as He has always had this attribute forever, and that He gives life and gives death, and this attribute was never absent. It was not absent from Him until He actually gave life to the dead. And again, the saying of people of misguidance, that Allah is the one who gives life to the dead only after He created the people, and then when He gave life to the dead, then He became the giver of life to the dead. So the Shaykh is making the point, no, Allah has always had this attribute, even before there were any creation to live or die, or be given life or death. Allah has always been the giver of life to the dead, and He has always been the giver of life, and He has always been the giver of death. Was only powerful when He wanted to create the creation, then He became powerful. No, Allah has always been the all-powerful. Shaykh al-Fawzan said, Rather, al-qudra, power and ability, is an eternal attribute, meaning of Allah. Rather, His having produced the creation, this is an effect produced by His being the one who has full power and ability. So the Shaykh said that contrary to the saying of the people of misguidance, the situation is the other way around. The people of misguidance, they say initially Allah did not have the attribute of power, for example. So Allah did not have the attribute of power, and then when He came to create the creation, then He had the attribute of power, and with that power He created the creation. The Shaykh said the opposite is the case. That this is an eternal attribute of Allah. Allah has always been the all-powerful, and the creation came about as a result of Allah's power, as an effect of Allah's power, which He has always had. And then Shaykh Fawzan said, and Allah is the one who described Himself as being the one who has full power and ability over everything, over the things that exist and over the things that do not exist. And He did not restrict His power to anything in particular. He didn't say that He just has power over such and such. He didn't restrict His power to anything in particular. Rather, nothing renders Him incapable. Nothing makes Allah incapable. And it is not permissible to restrict and say that He only has power over such and such. Then the Shaykh repeats a point here that we already had under point number 4, and I'll repeat the point that we had, and then there's a refutation of it which I'll read inshallah. Then Shaykh al-Fawzan said here, and it is not to be said, إِنَّهُ عَلَى مَا يَشَاءُ قَدِيرٌ, Allah has power over whatever He wishes. You shouldn't say that. That's what Shaykh al-Fawzan is saying here. And also Shaykh Muhammad ibn Mani' before, he said the same thing as well. You shouldn't say this saying here, that Allah has power over whatever He wishes. He said, because this saying, Allah has power over what He wishes, this saying is particular and restricted to gathering the people, the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth. The only time you find this in the Qur'an, that Allah mentions that He has power over what He wishes. He said the only time this is found is when Allah the Perfect and Most High mentions the gathering of the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth, meaning on the day of resurrection. And he quotes the ayah that we had before. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَثَّ فِيهِمَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ وَهُوَ عَلَى جَمْعِهِمْ إِذَا يَشَاءُ قَدِيرٌ. Surah Ash-Shura, ayah 29, with the explanation, and from His signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and all the creatures that He spread throughout them, and He has full power to gather them when He wishes. إِذَا يَشَاءُ, when He wishes. Shaykh al-Fawzan said, so this was a particular case. So, and as we said, we had this point before as point number 4, or under point number 4, وَلَا شَيْءَ يُعْجِزُهُ, and there is nothing which makes Allah incapable. We had this point here that Shaykh al-Fawzan said it's not permissible to say about to limit Allah's power by saying Allah has power over whatever He wishes. Shaykh al-Fawzan said that's restricting Allah's power. However, as a correction of this point, and as for Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah, then he has ability over whatever I wish. And this hadith is reported by Muslim, and you'll find it there in the book of Iman. So this is a hadith where the like of this wording occurs, that Allah Himself said about Himself that He has power, He has full power over whatever He wishes. Shaykh al-Albani said, after he brought this hadith, so the saying of Allah the Most High at the end of this hadith, but rather, I have full power over whatever I wish, this shows the error or the mistake of the one who wrote notes to Al-Aqedah Tahawiyyah, quoting some noble person, that some people say Allah has full power over whatever He wishes, and this saying is not correct. Shaykh al-Albani said, I say, rather it is exactly what is correct, after it's being established in this hadith, especially when it is witnessed to by the saying of Allah the Most High, وَهُوَ عَلَى جَمْعِهِمْ إِذَا يَشَاءُ قَدِيرٌ. Surah Ash-Shura, the ayah we just had. And Allah has full power to gather them when He wishes. So in other words, it is correct. It's not to be criticized that a person says Allah has full power over what He wishes. Then Shaykh al-Albani makes the final point, in case someone misunderstands. He says, and this does not negate, or this does not deny, that His wish and His power and ability, He the Most High, are general to everything, as someone seems to have thought, and Allah knows best. In other words, this saying that Allah has full power over whatever He wishes, this is not a limitation of His power. It doesn't mean we're saying that Allah's power is only restricted to what He wishes it to be restricted to, or it's only restricted to what He wishes. No. But this saying, there's no problem with that saying, and that saying is not a restriction of Allah's power. So that's a correction of what occurs in the explanation here, and a correction of what we mentioned under point number 4 in this.